Good day and welcome to another conversation with Marshall Forrest. My name is Stephen Parkus, and this is my good friend Logan Woldridge. How you doing today, Logan?
I'm doing well. How you doing today, man?
Doing well, man. Get ready for a nice conversation here.
Absolutely. I'm with you. Let's do it.
Very good. All right. So today we are talking about body weight exercise. Specifically, we're talking about the benefits and challenges of taking these exercises out into nature. Body weight training not only builds muscle and balance, but also reconnects you with your body in a new way. When you take that training outside, it becomes something more powerful. Exercising in nature isn't just good for your body, it also clears your mind, lifts your mood, and boosts your energy. So, as we're jumping in here, Logan, what are body weight exercises to those who may not be familiar?
Body weight exercises is, any kind of challenging movement for your body, much like, you would think of a curl, like a dumbbell or barbell curl. To work the muscle, you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it with just your body's natural weight in some way. Think of pull-ups, push-ups, body weight squats. All of these things are body weight exercises. So you can use some equipment or natural landmarks and things, but it's all done with just the weight of your body as the resistance.
Okay. Okay. And so after that answer, it might be a bit self explanatory, but can you explain why using body weight exercises can be a great entry into the world of fitness or even a great add on to those who already exercise regularly?
Absolutely. Particularly for those using it as an entry, it can be good because one, it's harder, not impossible, but harder to injure yourself doing it. Generally, with your own body weight, your body won't let you do, can't really do the kind of things that would typically hurt it. Again, it's not impossible to, but it's harder to than if, say, you don't know what you're doing and you try and throw some dumbbells around or some weight on a barbell around. It's a lot easier to harm yourself. At the same time, because it is your body weight, you also have it with you everywhere. So it's much easier in that sense too. It's much more convenient, right? You don't have to worry about equipment, whether that be the financials of affording it or the ability to be around it all the time if you like travel for whether that be pleasure or business. Where am I going to go that has weights of the kind I need, all the kinds I need, because I have a program that uses more than one. Body weight is a great way around all of those problems. You could even say the problem of I don't have time, because you can do it in your own home. If you know what you're doing, you have a program for it. And then for a great add-on for those already exercising, it really is if you already are doing things in the gym, then body weight exercises can be really good because it's provides a different type of stimulus to your body and even a different kind of weight manipulation. I'm not going to throw around a whole bunch of scientific terms or anything because I don't think we want to get into that right now. But needless to say, it does work. Even with it, the same amount of weight, it works that weight in a different way against your body.
Mm,
So it can provide those benefits.
okay. And are these bodyweight movements similar today as they were for, say, ancient warriors?
I'm not really sure what you're meaning by that. If you mean like, did they do push-ups and squats and things like that? Most likely, in some form, they were doing lunges, squats, pull-ups, push-ups. Um, there's some evidence. You can go and read the blog for more details um, about the Greeks and Romans using ropes similar to how we use gymnastic rings. You know, they didn't put the rings on them, but they had ropes that they would use to do things like this. And not just in military context, but also in athletic context, which is where the biggest evidence is, because, you know, it's easier to observe athletes than warriors heading to battle and write about it. Especially in terms of training. When you're headed to battle, they generally write about the battle. Um,
Right.
the athletes, they want to know how their training is and all of this, you know, how did they best ones get to be the best and such. So there's some writings about that, you know, again, not as much as there is about battles and such, but still there is some about, you know, using body weight movements. Yes.
And so, do you experience unique benefits when you take your workout outdoors?
Me personally, yes, definitely. You know, first of all, you know, you have the when I take mine outdoors, it's my own equipment, so I don't have to worry about, you know, is my the equipment going to be available or anything like that. There's also just the greater freedom of being outdoors. You know, I'm not in a room or anything like that. You know, the sky's above me. I can see trees. You know, so in that context as well, definitely. And then it's been a while since I haven't really, but I think there is, meaning I haven't worked out outdoors. You know, I've been doing that for a few years now. I think there, if I'm remembering accurately, there is in the realm of the rest periods as well. You know, it's easier to relax again when you're surrounded by the sky above you and the trees and, you know, maybe a little wood pile or something, you know, and you're feeling the breeze and you can see some birds occasionally, and, you know, you're hearing the birds and the sounds of nature and the wind and all that, instead of the, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's also something to be said for the motivation of hearing things like the metal clanging and stuff like that, but also there's those noises instead of any music, depending on what you like for background and feel a need to do, you know. That's the other thing, you know. I also can put headphones on, and that if I am feeling in need of that, and I do that at least half the time, have headphones on. So now I get the visual stimulus of the sky and all that with my headphones on. So you can kind of mix and match as you need each day too.
Okay. And what are some other ways of getting our daily dose of movement that are great for natural environments?
Well, I think the most obvious would be hiking, right? Hiking's always great anywhere you can go and do it. Jogging, particularly when you compare treadmill to jogging, you know, the road, let alone trails and things like that, you get increasing benefits as you get into a more natural environment doing something like jogging. From proprioceptive enrichment on a more, you know, trail environment to a softer ground to, again, all the benefits of the trees and such, the relaxation, not to mention there's weird effects that moving through specifically a natural environment has on our mental health and such. And I mean that in a good way. Like, it's weird in ways that we can't even fully explain right now why it's so beneficial to not even jog, but even just walk through like a woodland area. Gives you huge, like, you know, biochemical, if you will, hormonal benefits, which then improve, you know, your mental health and all these things. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for taking even something as simple as a walk out into a more natural environment. But again, if you don't live in an area where that's easy to do, taking it to a more natural environment, meaning instead of walking on, say, a treadmill in your living room watching a screen, go and walk to the store 3 blocks away or something.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I will say, I mean, we have some trails around here, but my daily walks, down to the store, just down into town, whatever, they've been a lifesaver, especially in the wintertime when movement's a little more limited. Yeah, absolutely. I remember not growing up, but when I was younger, I lived with some people who had a wood stove. I used to like to go out and like chop wood and stuff like that. Is that considered like that's still getting outside, getting in nature, moving
Oh,
around, right?
definitely, and that's, you could consider that a form of, activity. I wouldn't call it exercise. Exercise is generally more structured for a very specific physical benefit, at least the way we're using exercise in this context. Because then you got like meditation exercises and stuff like that. That's obviously not physical. I'm just saying. But in this context, exercise is meaning more structured towards physical whatever. So I wouldn't call chopping wood an exercise, but I would definitely call it activity, and it's upping your activity. And doing that can be equally beneficial to exercise, depending on how much you do it, of course, and how you do it, and what's your form, whether you're exercising or chopping wood. You don't ever want to be putting too much strain on like your lower back and shit like this, you know, without proper form. So, yeah, definitely
Okay. Okay.
anything like that. Hunting, depending on how you hunt, if you're, going and stand hunting, not as much exercise. But if you're still hunting, where you move slowly through the woods, pausing here and there, to try and track down prey instead of waiting just for it to come to you, then that's a lot of exercise, actually. You'd be surprised how trying to move super slow is just as hard, if not harder sometimes, than trying to, like, be explosive through your workouts and whatnot. It's a whole other kind of strength, equally beneficial, though.
Mm, okay. Well,
So any kind of activity, strenuous, activity that might make you sweat outdoors is great. Go ride a bicycle, go ski, snowboard, go water ski, go, depending on your climate, on the season, go do whatever it is that fit, not just physically, but for your mental health too.
mm, definitely.
And just gotta say, please do it respectfully.
Mm.
Don't be leaving your trash all over the place. And you can consider that a little extra exercise. Pick it up when you're done.
Right. Yeah. That old camper's adage, leave the campground nicer than when you got here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Think of
Yeah.
that everywhere,
Hmm. Yeah.
especially outside of campground, meaning, the natural places. It's almost more acceptable you do it right in the campground than you do it. Less acceptable you do it in the campground than in your own home, but you get my point.
Right.
The
Yeah.
more you go into nature, the more you should think that way, not the less.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have some respect, not just for your fellow human beings, but also for the environment as well.
For the creatures, for the plants, for everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, for beginners interested in building strength through bodyweight training, what are the best exercises and methods to start with?
Methods is really your choice a lot of times, especially actually in the beginning. You're probably just wanting more general improvements in the beginning. You're not going for anything specific. Plus, you're not used to doing anything, so anything's going to be beneficial. So, in the beginning, specifically, method, your choice. Exercises, if you're asking for specific exercises using body weight, I do have recommendations there. And that is, if you could do, I'm not going to say three, I'm going to say four exercises that with just your body weight, again, beginners to do, that would be the push up, the squat, the pull up, which yes, you might need some kind of bar or something to do that, but it's still just your body weight, and then lunges. And the reason I include two for the lower body isn't because like, oh, you use your lower body more. It's more because the squat is going to work, the general strength, and can work the general explosiveness. The lunge is also included because of balance. When you're going down, with that step, you're working balance in the single leg movement, and that's equally important, and you don't get that with the squat. So if you really want to work your balance, I know I gotta say, anything where you're standing or moving on your feet, you're gonna be improving your balance through, especially if you get, softer soled shoes or you're doing it barefoot or something. Again, you're doing it more in a natural environment like the woods or a trail over paved streets. It's going to improve your balance more. Again, you slowly work into that though. You go too hard, too fast, you can easily mess up like your knee or something trying to run on rugged trails when you've been sitting on a couch for 20 years. You're going to mess yourself up. So ease into harder and harder stuff. Don't just slam the hard stuff because it sounds fun. I know that can be slow and boring and suck, but it's the truth, man. You don't hurt yourself. So those 4 exercises: push up, squat, pull up, lunge.
Okay. Nice. Perfect. And so when performing those specific four that you just mentioned exercises, what are some common mistakes that you have experienced or that you see, and how can they be corrected?
The number one, I would say, is the not engaging the core in them all, right? Because when you think about what you're moving, at no point is your core exactly directly what you're focusing on or anything. And I do it from time to time too, even if it's just for a rep here or there, you relax and you just go through like a pull up or something, and you're like, oh, wow, I really felt that in my abdomen, because I felt a certain wrenching on my lower back or something that's not normally there because I didn't engage my core properly in that rep. I let myself relax a little too much. That's something we all do from time to time, but particularly with beginners, I think, because you just don't realize you need to always be keeping that core engaged, you know? And honestly, particularly for the last one, the lunge, the more unstable you are, the more you should keep that core engaged. You should always keep the core engaged in an exercise, but I want to emphasize it all the more for things like a lunge compared to a squat. Again, you're more off balance. You need more of core engagement. Is it all the more important? Otherwise, it's easier to tweak. Let things go off. All energy, kinetic energy and movement is going through your core in some way.
Hmm.
It's the center of your body.
Right. And then, could you just, I know we've talked about it a few times here and there before, but could you just like go into what you mean by engage the core a little bit more?
Yeah, you want to flex the core. And I don't mean push it out, and get it hard. I mean engage the abdominal muscles. What you would do when you're doing like a crunch or something. And I know not everybody's able to do that on command. It's something you should work on then. There are some exercises that you can do to work on that. And we might get into that sometime. But I
Okay.
don't believe that's the point today. So we won't today.
Right, right. But I mean, even just sitting right here, like I can tense up my stomach muscles. I feel that tightening up, back by the spine a
Yeah,
little more.
where you pull it in such a way, right? Like it's not just tightening, you're flexing in such a way, like if when you flex your bicep and your arm actually goes up, because that's what that muscle does.
Hmm.
Same thing with the core. So you'll slightly punch just a little bit when you're
Hmm.
doing.
Yep. Yeah, I feel it. Okay. Yeah. And so, what challenges should someone anticipate when adapting a body weight routine for an outdoor setting?
Honestly, particularly bodyweight routines, I think are a little easier in an outdoor rather than an indoor setting because again, as soon as you go into almost any back workout, I mean, there are things you can use around the house to kind of build some make do equipment to do like inverted rows, to work the back muscles. But outdoors, you have tree branches and things like this. You have light posts and all kinds of different things you can reach up and grab that you don't really have as much of in the house. And some that you do, you don't always want to be hanging off of like a door. I think it's actually easier to do this particular type of exercise outdoors, a body weight.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, especially with my space challenges. It's much easier on the front porch or out in the yard. Okay, and so both body weight training and outdoor workouts emphasize a strong mind-body connection. And can you discuss what role does mindfulness play in your outdoor workout routine?
Well, first of all, I just want to say any workout should be have a strong mind body component. You'll even hear bodybuilders talk about the mind muscle connection. There should always be an intentional connection with the movements you're going through. It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm just doing these dumbbell curls.
Mm.
No, you're doing something specific for a very specific reason. So you want to stay controlled and be in control all the time, not just, here I'm doing it like this again to exemplify I'm using equipment, a movement everybody knows, those dumbbell curls, right? So that has to be intentional too. So it's not fair to really say these have a strong mind-body connection. However, there is an added component, if you wish, to the mindfulness aspect of working out outdoors. And I believe that is, if you wish, once you're through the workout, because again, the workout should always be mindful and intentional in the movement. But in those rest periods, you can add in the mindfulness by really getting absorbed in, again, that sensory experience of being in the outdoors. Look up at the clouds and fathom the endless depth of the sky, and how maybe you can try and match that impossible task of, you know, pushing that kind of limit. It's just some crazy mind and immersion that you can get into the outdoors. Looking into the forest if you happen to be where you can really see into one, and imagining what might be in there that someday could challenge you and use that to push you towards a hard next set or something. There's all kinds of different mindfulness games, mind games, if you will, you can be playing, and to help with the mindfulness of the fact that you're outdoors and using that to your advantage.
Mm.
You can use it in exactly the opposite way too, to think of things instead of to push you, to calm you down during those sets. So in the beginning, think of the calming stuff, and then bring it to the more motivating stuff when you're getting amped into your next set. There's all kinds of stuff you can do like that with the outdoors. Yeah.
Mm. Absolutely. I love it. Okay. I think that when it comes to any exercise, really, I think many people struggle with consistency and adherence. How would you say working outdoors and using body weight, and equipment-free exercise help foster a more sustainable and enjoyable fitness routine?
the the biggest one, now, I love all back workouts, right? Like, that's just my favorite muscle group to work out. I just want to preface that with that, because for me, the biggest thing that jumps out when you ask that is the pull up, right? Because the pull up is a body weight exercise that, more than anything, if you're doing a traditional pull up, is working your lats, really, if you're doing it right. And the lats are very difficult to work without kind of specialized equipment, honestly. So that is a huge benefit for just that particular body weight exercise. But in more general, body weight works, again, allows you to work in such a way that can help to lower the chances of injury, particularly if you have gone through a recent really high effort program. Because that's the other thing, right? Nobody should be working a top effort program all the time. You cycle through phases and programs, of higher effort and lower effort. And are you working on correcting certain imbalances? Because even if you train for years in the best way possible, things are going to get out of balance if you're making, pushing to make any kind of progress. Otherwise, you're spending all your time doing, maintenance. And that can be just a dead end and demotivating, you know. So we need to be pushing sometimes, which will occasionally get us out of alignment. Then we need to cycle back to a little more of a stability, you know, and corrective program. And then maybe we're ready to cycle back into strength, but then we want to work on more muscular endurance. Then we want to work on more max power. You know, once you get to a certain phase, you're able to just mix up all these phases somewhat as you want, and sometimes when needed, like to a corrective program because you've been pushing so hard, it's time to bring it back and just kind of recuperate. In those times, body weight exercises are phenomenal. You know, there's few exercises that you're gonna do that are as low impact and yet can still be, you know, or can still involve some good effort. You know, if you do a 5 pound dumbbell curl and when you can do 40 pounds, it's just going to be fucking boring. You know, I'm not even doing anything. But even if you can bent over row 225, when you do 5 pull ups, you're going to start feeling it.
Mm. Yeah.
And even if you're not, you can slow it down enough so that you'll feel it. Like it's a lot easier to do all that with body weight than it is with, again, at that low level, especially than it is with weights. And it kind of becomes honestly a little vice versa when you get up there. It becomes harder to use body weight when you're at a certain level. Not impossible. In fact, there's some really wild and cool exercises you can learn to do to increase difficulty, but you got to know how to do them. So it becomes more difficult to do the body weight when you get more advanced, whereas weight in a weird way kind of becomes easier when you get more advanced.
Mm.
Not easier in the effort or anything like that, just in the complexity of like, oh, can I figure out how to do this next level of advancement? It's the same movement with more weight, man. You know how to do that. Go
Right.
for it. You know, body weight's like I got to figure out a whole new movement because I got to challenge these muscles in a whole new way. So, like, what do you consider difficult? What kind of way do you want to push yourself? And all this becomes a component as well.
Ah, I like that. Yeah, I didn't even think of that next level there. You know, the next movements. I think it's easy to get caught up in like the big four, like you said. You know, push-ups, squats, maybe some sit-ups every now and then. But yeah, a lot of people get kind of like they have those exercises in their mind. They don't think outside them. But yeah. Hmm. Okay. Okay. And I also thought it was interesting. You know, I didn't really realize, maybe I had heard it before, but I didn't really think about the fact that it's totally working different muscles in different types of ways, you know, than being in a gym and just curling or, you know, benching, something like that. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
very interesting. Uh-uh. Okay. So Logan, any final words of advice or anything that you would give to those looking to start their own journey or advance further on their current path in this approach?
Not really. You know, other than just give it a shot. You know, take your whatever you're doing. If you're already doing it, do it outdoors. If you're not doing anything yet, you know, and trying it outdoors gives you a little more motivation, then by all means, give it a shot. You know, that's it.
Absolutely. Don't know until you try.
Indeed.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Please keep an eye out for more content and videos on themarshallforest.com and our YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram pages. We are constantly putting out new material for you guys and always making updates and adding more to benefit your growth and wellness. Wishing you progress on your path and good health throughout your day. This is the Marshall Forest out.